Hello and welcome to Top Story. 7 years after George W. Bush famously announced that he had looked into Vladimir Putin's eyes and found his soul, the two men met in the Russian Black Sea resort of Sochi on Sunday for their farewell summit. But there was no dramatic last-minute deal, just a declaration on a strategic framework and an agreement to work to overcome differences on the key issue of anti-missile defense. President Putin was frank about the problems, among them the US anti-missile shield in Eastern Europe, NATO enlargement, the future of the conventional forces in Europe agreement, and Kosovo. The Russian leader did, though, give a hint that progress towards an agreement on the missile shield might be within reach. He was, he said, cautiously optimistic that a deal could be reached, but the devil remained in the detail. Washington, he said, was genuinely trying to accommodate Russian concerns and was showing a real commitment to transparency. Well, joining me now to assess the summit and the Bush-Putin relationship is Isabelle Facon, who's a senior research fellow at the Foundation for Strategic Research here in Paris. Thanks very much for being on Top Story. Putin says he's cautiously optimistic that a deal can be reached on the US anti-missile shield. I mean, that is an amazing change. If you remember where we were a year ago, and there's Putin at Munich when he made that incredibly strident speech, it didn't seem possible that he would say at some stage that he was cautiously optimistic that a deal could be reached.
I think we received some signals before that. A few months ago, they started to exchange views quite regularly, so we could see that maybe the atmosphere was getting softer. And indeed, some ideas have emerged. First, the Russians put proposals on the table. Then, to reply, the US also shared their views on some new proposals. For instance, the possibility for Russian observers to be at the Polish site or the Czech radar. So we have to wait and see. But indeed, over the past few weeks, we had some signals that something new could appear.
When Vladimir Putin says that the devil is in the details, what specifically do you think he's referring to? What are the key sort of areas that he wants to see resolved?
We don't really know, actually, but I guess that the more transparency there can be on the part of the US and also the Polish and the Czech, the more Russia will be satisfied. So I guess the details, it's on that, on transparency and the way Russia is engaged and really involved in this new scheme for European anti-missile defense. So we don't really know, but Russia wants to be in and not out.
I suppose part of the problem, too, will be convincing the Czechs and the Poles that the Russians should be in a big way, because they won't be happy having lots of Russian observers running around.
I'm not sure. And by the way, the Polish side has already said that they don't want to have a Russian permanent presence on their soil. So I'm sure that there will be a lot of talks and it will be quite difficult to get agreement. But it's already good that they have some better atmosphere even on this issue, which has been the main point of tension between them over the past few months.
Do you see this issue being resolved before President Bush leaves office?
No, I'm sure not.
It's going to last for a while yet.
Yes.
Well, they spoke about a declaration on strategic cooperation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what does that amount to, if anything? Or is it just lots of words about
I'm afraid it's not so a big issue because if you remember well, already in 2002, just after the euphoria of new strategic partnership, after September 11th, when Putin supported Bush and so on, they already signed such an agreement, strategic framework for better relationship between Russia and the US. And the themes, they were already the same, fight against terrorism, better trade relationship, common fight against proliferation of weapons of mass destruction and so on. And so you see the result, 2007, it was a big crisis in US-Russia relationships. So I'm not quite optimistic about that because it's quite a general issue, but it's already good given the bad atmosphere in relationship over the past months that they have decided commonly to have a better atmosphere in their relations. So
and there was talk too of a global missile system on which the United States, Russia and the European Union would be working together to try and resolve international security. And it's extraordinary, you know, for Putin and Bush to be talking in those terms when we remember what's happened in recent times.
No, it's not so extraordinary because the Russians, one of the proposals they put forward was that kind of joint effort against possible missile threats. So it's not so surprising. But what is surprising is that now it's possible to mention it quite publicly. So maybe it will be done. But it's quite sensitive because it would involve sharing sensitive information. It would imply that the sides, they have the same views on where the threat is coming from, and I can guess that it will take some time before they get agreement on all of these issues. So let's be optimistic like Putin, but I'm not sure that it can be solved all of a sudden, even though they want to do it.
One of the proposals that the Russians made in the past, as a sort of counter to what the Americans were suggesting, was the idea that they might together be able to make use of the radar shield that already exists in Azerbaijan, but that seems to have been put on the back burner.
Yeah, I'm not sure that the US is interested in that. They really rejected the offer, saying that it was not, from a technical point of view, so interesting. Maybe also because they fear that because of the maybe difficulties in Russia-Azerbaijan relationship, it would not be so practical to do it. But I think that it's one of the main problems, how to convince the Russians and how to find common ways, but keeping the control. So I'm not sure that it's so easy for the US to find a way. But the Gabala option quite obviously has been rejected.
One of the other things that clearly concerns President Putin, and he made it clear again yesterday in Sochi, was the idea of NATO expansion.
Yeah, so it was clear.
No progress.
No progress, because some people said, well, it was a great victory for Putin, and that at the Bucharest they didn't give the map to Ukraine and Georgia. But at the same time, in the final declaration, it's clear. Georgia and Ukraine will one day in the future join NATO. So for Russia, it's not a victory. The idea is now for Russia to get used to the idea that...
It's a bitter pill, though, for Russia to swallow, isn't it?
Yeah, so, and Putin mentioned that again at the Sochi summit, saying that it was a problem, it was an obsolete logic to enlarge NATO, and so Russia cannot accept this, etc. So I think in the future, and under the future presidents of both the US and Russia, NATO enlargement will keep on being a real problem.
So that's going to be one for President Medvedev to pick up when he has his next meeting with President Bush.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all we have time for, I'm afraid.
Yeah, we'll have to think about it.
Thanks to our guest Isabelle Facon. Join us again tomorrow for another edition of Top Story. Goodbye.
Goodbye.